build a robot. It kinda has to be a robot. Let's give it a try.
Hi, GoBoxers. Today we are working on our state machine code, and I've already gone ahead and plugged in my light sensor and my LED to my GoPy I've opened up Scratch, and I've gone ahead and created a quick little piece of code to just check the threshold value on my light sensor. You can go back to a previous mission to find that code, or you can just see what I've done here. All I wanted to do is go ahead and check my threshold, so I'm going to go ahead and run that right now. So when my light sensor sees the light, it's looking like it's around 757. When I cover it up, it drops down into the 200s. So I'm going to figure something in the 400s would be a reasonable threshold for me today. Even if you know your threshold from another day, you probably want to go ahead and check again today. It might be brighter where you are. You might be in a different room. It might just be that the sun's come out. But go ahead and calculate your threshold any way you're comfortable doing that. And then we can start our main program for today. So my main program is going to start when the space key is pressed. And I'm going to go ahead and make 3 variables for this program. I'm going to make one called count. I'm going to make one called state. I'm going to make one called threshold. And we'll talk about how we're going to use these 3 variables later on. But now I have them. First thing you always do in a program is you want to go ahead and initialize your variables. I'm going to make sure that I set count to 0 at the beginning. I can set state to 0 or 1. I'm going to set it to 1 because when I test this, I usually start with the lights on. If you are planning to start with the lights off in your experiment, you could start it at 0. You could also do a check right before your repeat and set state by hand if you don't know whether you're going to start with them on or off. So that's your choice. And then I'm going to set threshold, somewhere around 400, given what we just saw. That's not going to be the same number for everyone, so you'll need to use your own threshold value there. So now that my variables are ready for us to use, I'm going to go ahead and start a repeat loop because we're going to be watching to see somebody turning these lights on, and we don't know how long we're going to watch. That's going to be up to the user. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to keep running this program until the user goes ahead and presses the X key. You could find a different way to end your program, but you do always want to have a plan for how you're going to stop a loop. You want to exit your loops gracefully, either by having a way to get out of a repeat, having something happens that ends the program, putting a stop in there somewhere. It's especially important when you're worried about your robot driving off a table, but we're not turning motors on today, but you still want to have a nice, easy way to get your program to stop. So the next thing I need to do is I need to check out what's going on with the light sensors right now. So I'm going to go get a value from the light sensor. Every time I start this loop again, I want to check the light sensor. And then I'm going to need some if-then-else statements. My first if-then-else statement is going to check on what the state variable said. Remember we said that if the lights are off, we're going to call that a state 0. And if the lights are on, we're going to call that a state 1. So what we're checking here is what was true before. Forget what the light sensor says now, but a few seconds ago, or in our case, I think our wait's going to be about a half second, what were the lights doing the last time I checked? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take an operator and we're going to check and see our variables, in this case. Last time we checked, was it dark? If not, it was light. So it was either dark or light. We know that. Last time we checked, it was absolutely either dark or light. So now we're going to do some things in each of those cases. And what we're going to do is actually we're going to check something else. So we need 2 more if-then-else statements. 1 in there and 1 in there. And both of these are going to be checking out what the light sensor value is right now. And so we're going to use a less than operator for both of these. So what we would like to know right now is the value of the light sensor right now. I need to make sure it says light sensor. Is it less than our threshold? I made threshold a variable. Whoops. And I set count, not threshold. Did anybody else catch that? Threshold is 400, not the count. That would be a lot of flipping the switch. So I have this check here twice. So I have a line of code that looks the same right now that says, hey, is the light sensor value less than the threshold? Which essentially means, is it dark right now? That's because I want to check that either if it was dark or if it was light. One way to simplify this to help understand it is to put some say statements in just to sort of help us understand what's going on in here. So for each case, we've got 4 possibilities. I'm going to go ahead and put a say in, and in a minute we're going to make sure they don't all say hello. You don't have to add these, but I find it really helps me as I'm thinking through a program. I use say as a little bit like I might use a comment, so that I'm continually getting some feedback about what's going on and making sure that what I think I'm seeing is what's really happening. These don't need to be that long. If we wait 2 seconds each time, we will make ourselves crazy. We're going to make these half a second. And we're also going to make sure we wait an additional half a second before we check it again, because really checking every second to make sure we know whether the lights are on or off is probably plenty, unless you have some kind of crazed light sensor flipper hanging out, light flipper hanging out in your room. Make sure that weight goes where I want it. And this weight can be pretty short because we've already got that weight there. All right, so saying hello is not going to help us. So let's see if we can figure out what's actually happening in each of these cases. So right here, the state is 0, which means it was dark, and the light sensor is less than the threshold, which means it's still dark. Nothing interesting happening here. It was dark, and it is still dark. Not very exciting. So here, we're saying the state was 0, but the sensor value is bigger than the threshold. Something happened. It was dark, but now it is light. Hooray, somebody turned on the lights. If we're down here, the lights were on when we started. So it was light, but now it is dark. Okay, in the dark up here. Go back and fix that so that we don't confuse anyone. There we go. And then here, this is actually another boring case. It was light, and it is still light. So in some of these cases, we don't need to do anything. Anything where it's an and still, the state's not changing, the count's not changing, the threshold's never changing, so we can leave those stills alone. It's the 2 that have buts that we need to look at, because the but means that something's changing. It was dark, but now it's light. So let's go ahead in here. In this first one, where it was dark and now it's light, we're going to make 2 changes. First of all, we're going to take our state variable. And look, the state changed. It's not dark anymore. It's light. And we're counting how many times it gets light. So we're also going to go ahead. We can't set our count to a specific number because we don't know how many times the lights have gone on or off, but we can add 1 to it. Down here, it was light, but now it's dark. We're going to we don't want to change our count because we're counting how many times it gets light, but we do want to change our state. Make it clear that it's dark now. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and run this and see if we see what we expect to. So see, as I'm putting my thumb over the sensor, I've made it dark. My thumb's over the sensor right now. Oh, I just turned on the lights. The count went up. Cat knows it's light. Cover it up again. It's dark. Count doesn't go up when I make it dark, but now I'm taking my thumb off. When I make it light, it goes ahead and updates. If that's changing too fast for you, you might want to change the amount of time in those say statements or in that wait, so it works out for you. When I'm ready to stop, I'm going to go ahead and press X. And my program stops. That's great, but the thing that's left to do is we want to report out what's happening. So we are going to go down to the bottom of this program. And after we press X and say, okay, we're done counting, we're not quite done with the program. We want to go ahead and we want to tell people what's going on here. So I need some joins in here because I want to use both some strings that I type in and the contents of a variable. So I'm going to put 2 joins in here. Join inside a join. Very tricky, but a good way to get 3 things in here. So you turned on the light some number of times. Not hello time, so let's go get our variable. So that will tell us on the screen, but we have this LED that we went through all that trouble to plug in, and we might want to tell people who are in the room with your GoPi Go and not necessarily even at the screen. We might want them to know what's going on. Hey, you opened up that refrigerator a lot of times today. You're wasting electricity. Knock it off. So if we want to be able to do that, we're going to use our LED to report this information out. So we want to tell them count times. So instead of repeating tens, another cool use for variables, I can drop it right into my repeat loop. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the lights on that many times. Scroll down a little here so we can see what's going on. This is going to be LED 255. Turn our light on. Then we're going to wait because if we turn it immediately back off, we won't even see it. Our eyes just aren't that fast. Doesn't need to be very long though. Can't use fractions, so I'm going to use a decimal here. To turn it back off, there's no LED off. But there's, oops, I didn't mean to stop that. Good thing I have an X to stop it. Remember that clicking on a script in Scratch starts it just like hitting whatever key does. And it's really easy to do. Luckily, this one doesn't have motor, so I didn't drive it away. LED 0, we'll turn that off. One more wait. And we are good to go. So I hope you try this out on your own. I hope you think of ways to change it and make it your own. I hope you share what you're doing with the GoBox community. And we will talk to you next month.